Shalom, shalom, shalom. What up? How everybody doing? Welcome to Reading with SHILO. We back. It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute, everybody. But we're gonna try to make some shit. Hey, let me figure out a place for this. Been having a good week. Crazy shit. All right. We'll try to work with that. We're going to try to work with that for tonight right now. All right. This is Reading with SHILO. We're going to try to finish up this book on the real side by Mr. Mel Watkins. We're on chapter 10. Chapter 10. Section 6. Man, I've been looking at my stuff and it seemed like so long ago that I read, but Chapter 10, Literary Reflections of African American Humor, Depictions of Things Unseen. And we're on section 6. Section 6. Now, it's been a minute, but we about done with the book. Now, I ain't got to read all this, though. But I'm not reading the notes. Even though I'm pretty sure maybe some people think you should. Maybe about this much left of the book. And I can finish it. I can do it. So let's push through it. Yeah. So come on in, shalom. Man, when I'm reading, if it comes to something I don't understand, I'm gonna look it up. You wanna look up the definition? I gotta dust off all the dust off of my old stuff so we get started, man. All right, section 6. Section 6. By the early 70s, largely through mass media exposure of comedians such as Dick Gregory, Bill Cosby, Flip Wilson, Red Fox, and still reserved Richard Pryor, black comedy had taken one large step out of its ghetto confinement to make a small dent in America's consciousness. Even the overwhelming majority of mainstream Americans who were unfamiliar with the works of Chestnut, Schuler, Fisher, Hurston, Hughes, Hines, and Ellison, or blind to the satire of comic thrusts of their work, began suspecting that their revered Beulahs and Snowballs, their Coon and Sambo figures, discarded their masks in private and revealed in a different kind of humor. The mystery surrounding African Americans' persistent, often disconcerting laughter was increasingly being unraveled in on primetime television in full view of non-black audiences, primed on Uncle Remus, racial ventriloquy, tar-faced, Google-eyed knickknacks, and rotund, beamingly complacent servants. Not surprisingly, more black authors began reflecting the comic resonance. Oh, shit. Uninhibited such assurance and assertively impudent tone of those stage wits and clowns. Although James Baldwin, the 60s best-known black writer, generally eschewed the comic, others enthusiastically embraced it. A raft of poets, for instance, abandoned the more polite satire and measured European cadences of their forerunners and adopted an explosive, street-based, expressive voice. Combining such African American comics devices as puns. Tall tales. My bad. What is this? Humbug, man. I don't pinch shit. My bad, my bad. My phone tripping. Combining such African American comic devices as puns, tall tales, and braggadocio with blues and jazz rhythms, and an often militantly in, iconoclastic approach, they aggressively polarized mainstream American politics and culture, and in the spirit of popular song that most ardently echoed the tenor of the era. Let me see what that word means, because I don't know what. Oh, iconoclastic. I pronounced it wrong. Iconoclastic. Militantly iconoclastic. So let's look it up and see what it is. Iconoclastic. 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 Who knows what it means? Do you know what it means? Because I can't think of it off the top of my head. I would lose in Scrabble. Iconoclastic. A person who destroys religious images. A person who seeks to destroy the established order. Iconoclastic. Braggadocio with blues and jazz rhythms of an often militantly person who destroys religious images approach, or a person who seeks to destroy the established orders approach, a militantly person, a militantly iconoclastic approach. They're aggressively pillared mainstream American politics and culture, and in the spirit of the popular song, the most ardently echoed the tenor of the era. James Brown, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," exuberantly celebrated Black life. Their voices ranged from strident to nuanced, from cynically revolutionary to satirically conciliatory. Conciliatory. Let's see what that is. What up, baby? Iconoclasm. Yeah. Some of the words I pronounced wrong, man. It's been a minute, man. I haven't been reading like I should. At least I haven't been reading this, man. I've been bullshitting. Conciliatory. I've been bullshitting on reading. I've been busy on other shit, bullshitting on reading. Conciliatory. Or at least that's how I'm pronouncing it. Conciliatory. Conciliated. It's not in here, but conciliated is to win by genial or soothing approaches, to make reconcile, to satirically make reconcile, or to satirically win. Among the most successful were Larry Neal, David Henderson, Sonia Sanchez, Quincy Troop, Sarah Webster, Fabio, Mary Evans, A.B. Spellman, Jay Wright, Carol Rogers, Don L. Lee, June Jordan, Ishmael Reed, and Nikki Giovanni. Another, Amari Baraka, formerly Leroy Jones, employed a sardonic approach to variously skewered black bourgeois apathy, white racism, and white cultural imperialism in his poetry as well as his plays, essays, and fiction. Baraka is a master of comic modes, Charles H. Nicholas contends, of mirror and mask effects, irony, sarcasm, and paradox. A prolific commentator on black music and culture, Baraka made lavish use of the vernacular idiom in his creative satiric works. Humor in his poetry often took the form of scathing sarcasm as the three mode of history and culture. The Party of Insane. The Party of Insane Hope. I've come from there too, where the dead told lies about clever social justice. Burning coffins voted and staggered through cold white sheets listening to Wilkie or Wallace or Dewey through the dead face of Lincoln. Come from there and belched it out. In his play Dutchman in 1964, the mocking signifying exchanges between Lula and Clay offer insight into the seeking or the seething, but often comic, oh Lord, often comic vicissitudes, man. Vicissitudes. Man. That's one thing reading does do, man. It puts you in touch with some words, man. Vicissitude. A change in fortune that affects one's life. Vicissitude. I'll rock for that. Throughout his work, there's an attention to incongruity and a knack for creating arc juxtapositions that not only mirror the slickest street raps and put downs, but also enleaven them with the selective imaginary of a poet. In The Harlem Evoked, in his short story collection Tales in 1968, one may encounter various freaks up and down the street, like black blondes or niggas with good jobs. And a character can, with sly irony, brag, I was always hip. I mean, I knew about Brooks Brothers when I was 10. Glib and observant, Baraka's satire is rooted in an intense awareness of those persistently absurd aspects of American life that have fueled African Americans' comic perception since slavery. Poet, essayist, and novelist Ishmael Reed began exploring the comic in an even more expansive and caustic manner in the 60s. Like Baraka, Reed targeted the assumed priority of Western ideology, as well as black bourgeois mimicry of those ideals in literature, politics, and mass culture. My main job, he wrote, was to humble Judeo-Christian culture. But unlike Baraka, in whose work satire and humor were essentially used to heighten and punctuate a primarily rational dissection of Western hegemony, in his fiction Reed created an imaginative world that not only ridiculed the icons and tenets of Western culture, but invoked the Dionysian rites or festivals to which Aristotle traced the comic spirit. Dionysian. Do I have that? What is Dionysian? Something to do with that Greek Aristotle. D-I-O-N, capital D-I-O-N-Y-S-I-A-N. D-O. It's just how I'm pronouncing it. Dionysian. Dionysian. Let's see what it means. Dionysian. 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 Blah, blah, blah. Adjective. It's an adjective. Of or relating to Dionysius. Characteristic of Dionysius. Or the cult of worship of Dionysius. Being of a frenzy or orgiastic character. Dionysia. Dionysian. 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 Who is Dionysius? Dionysius. Somebody devoted to the worship of Dionysius. I don't know who the hell that is. There's got to be somebody in mythology. Mythology. Let's see. Dionysius. Let's see. This is the ultimate book on mythology. Dionysius. Let's see if he's in here. D-I-O. Page 13. Dionysus. Page 13, page 21. Page 13. See what we can see about Dionysus. Shalom, everybody who's coming in. Shalom, shalom. Dionysus. That's what I'm looking for. To see who the hell is Dionysus that people was worshiping. I don't see it. 21. It's not sticking out. Apollo. Everybody know who Dionysus was. 23. There we go. Dionysius above. Zeus, child by Semele, appears here hugging his mother, while Apollo stands by the bay tree. Once he became a god, Dionysus raised his mother to heaven and placed her among the stars as Phaon. The Etruscan mirror is bordered with ivy, which was Dionysus' sacred plant. The ivy, Dionysus. I'm gonna have to read more about who the hell Dionysus is. Like, Dionysus. More precisely, since Reed would likely disavow any significant connection between his art and ancient Greece, and has argued that his work presents figures modeled on African art, his work evokes what he calls neo-Hoodoo, whose source is the nihilist African Lua or Loa, or spirit of the Bwebe, and whose center is the drum, the ankh, and the dance. However, one defines the creative source of Reed's imagination. There is little doubt about its mordant comic thrust. Reed's novels place the reader squarely in that turbulent domain where societal masks are ripped away, pretensions and conceits are challenged and ridiculed, and upheaval and chaos, the priority of disordered life, or exalted why tyrannical order is exposed as oppressive and demeaning. As such, they cut to the center of the comic province and reflect a dominant aspect of African American humor. Its cynical apprehension of mainstream American culture and insistent embracing of a more spontaneous, fluid, and jocular approach to daily life or daily life. According to Reed, in the 60s, Black writers started going back to the folklore, and that's where the humor is. The punchlines and nuances of African American humor go back to that tradition. Humor is more third world than Western and Christian. Reed's first novel, The Freelance Pallbearers in 1967, was, on one level, an allegory in which the hero, Bucka Duperbuck, attempts to gain access to the throne. Attempts to gain access to the throne of power in the hand of Harry Sam, a country ruled by a dictator of the same name. A parody of the Horatio Alger success story, the novel follows Bucca, a naive hospital orderly, as he grapples his way to the top. But Harry Sam has dominated by corruption and madness, which in Reed's fictional construct is characterized by one central symbol: excrement. Excrement. Harry Sam, or Uncle Sam, is ruler of an anally oriented society. He is also a cannibal whose throne is a toilet in which he sits for extended periods of time. Sewage backs up throughout the land of Bucca. Sewage backs up throughout the land, and Bucca, who spends his days emptying bedpans. Shit. Who spends his days emptying bedpans, has a relative who once kissed Calvin Coolidge's ass, and an intellectual mentor, U2 polyglot, who shoves a pile of dung around with his nose to test a literary theory about Kafka's metamorphosis. The languages of advertising, of politics, of scholarship, of bureaucracy, of medicine, and of religion are specifically my bad. Bureaucracy of medicine and of religion are specifically shown to be forms of human waste. The critic Keith E. Byerman argues. To another critic, the novel has, at different times, a nightmarish fantasy. A cacophonous, I don't know who is this cacophon guy. Cacophsky. A Kakovsky, Kafkaesque. I might not be pronouncing it right. Kofsky. Tchaikovsky absurdity, whoever Kofsky is, a Kofsky absurdity, lore, and realism of ghetto life. Moreover, it is also a black satirist, darkly comic, imaginative rendering of a decisive view of American and an American dream commonly held by ordinary blacks in the 60s. That is, full of shit. Reed continued his assault on Western culture and tradition in Yellowback Radio Back Down. Fuck, excuse me, my bad. Yellowback Radio broke down in 1969. Advertised as the first hoodoo western, it was like the predecessor, a parody of a popular literary genre. Its black cowboy hero, the Loop Guru Kid, possibly a takeoff of Lash LaRue, one of Hollywood's few western stars who wore black, is a folk hero in the bad nigga mold, in the folklore in the bad nigga mold, who set out to destroy the prevailing religious, social, and political order. Man. But he is also a root doctor, a conjure man, born with a caul over his face and ghost lobes on his ears, who employs the power of hoodoo to humiliate, outwit, or destroy his adversaries. The struggle between hoodoo culture and Western ideology also dominates Reed's third novel, Mumbo Jumbo, in 1972. Here, the hero of Papa LaBasse, New Orleans Hogan, who during the Roaring Twenties attempts to discover the source of Jules group, the mysterious psychic plague that is sweeping the nation, like African American psychopathic. I'm making up my own words. I am fumbling that word up. SYNCOPATED. Synacapitated. Copated. Psychopated, maybe? Psychopated. Psychopated. SYNC. I don't know if that N is silent. SYNCOPATED. Trying to look it up. I don't know that word. Psychopathy. Maybe that's it. SYN. Syncopated. Tripping. I'm tripping. Syncopated. To shorten to shift. Like African American syncopated music. Like African American shortened music. Like African American syncopated music or jazz, Jougru has spread from New Orleans to Chicago and, along the way, amassed a following in whom the spiritual nihilism or passionate desire to dance and the inhibited pursuit of pleasure have immediately surfaced. It has also attracted an array of determined opponents. A Southern congressman, let me get very comfortable. A Southern congressman in the novel clearly voices the nature of their opposition. Jougru is a boll weaver eating away at the fabric of our forms, our techniques, our aesthetic integrity. In Mumbo Jumbo, Jougru, whether it is seen as jazz or the spirit of Harlem Renaissance, as critics has variously suggested, represents the hoodoo or spirited African American equation in Reed's lexicon of values. As in his previous two novels, it is set against the conservative, controlling influence of Western culture. But while this tension frame Reed's satirical approach in his early novels, it's never totally defined it. There's a freewheeling, almost frantically, frenetically inspired mischievousness in Reed's work that transcends most critically definitions. That don't even make no sense. His novels are montages in which historical fact, actual people, and excuse me. Oh, excuse me, shit. And literary or in literary, his novels are montages, in which historical fact, actual people, and literary or media created fictional characters are combined with parody, farces, jokes, folklore, street vernacular, and outrageous imaginative leaps to lampoon on assortment of people, concepts, and institutions. In the manner of H.L. Mencken and George Schuler, whom Reed admired, nearly anything that Reed finds regressive, spiritually confining, or inhumane becomes a target for his scattergun wit. Like a hero, or like the hero of Yellowback Radio Broke Down, Reed often seems to be scatting arbitrarily, using forms of this and adding his own, blowing like the celebrated musician Charles Yardbird Parker, improvising as he goes along. The freelance pallbearers, for example, besides skewering the spiritual and political underpinnings of Harry Sam's domain, polarizes artists who have prostituted their art for hula hoops and signifies about the literary works of, among others, T.S. Eliot and Ralph Ellison, as though they were cultural detritus, cultural detritus, cultural detritus. Let's see what that is. Detritus, maybe? Cultural detritus. 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 Cultural detritus. 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 Let's see. detriment, cultural harm or cultural damage, maybe. As though they were cultural detritus, cultural damage, maybe cultural harm, because all it has is my bad detriment. Oh well. Yellowback Radio broke down not only unleashes the hoodoo inspired Loop Guru Kid on the forces of repression, but also satirizes the Pope and parodies black aesthetic advocates through Bo Schmo, the leader of the neo-realist gang who writes suffering books about his neighborhood and warns the crazy data nigga hero that they can't afford the luxurious and individualism gumming up our rustling. In addition, the novel is rife with puns. A voyeuristic congressman is described as having Groucho maxed into the room. The humor that, like Flip Wilson's stand-up routines, uses cultural and historical displacement for comic effect. The Pope suggestion that Loop's men can be lured away with the bottle of cheap, dirty wine, two stagecoach tickets, and a rolled up $10 bill is reminiscent of Wilson's Christopher Columbus routine, in which the supplies from Chris's voyage include two pair of fatigues, some shades, and two chicken sandwiches, 3 cans of Vienna sausages, 5 cases of scotch, a small 7-Up, and a new rag to tie his head with. In addition to its satirical portrait of conflict between Zhu Group and its antagonist, the Atanis, dedicated to the glorification of Western culture, the affiliated Wallflower organization, whose creed man, that shit, my phone, I need to get my laptop working, man. My phone fucking up with pissing me off. Whose creed is Lord, if I can't dance, no one will. Mumbo Jumbo includes some riotous parodies of Harlem Renaissance types and actual figures. Warren Harding and Irene Castle, a popular dancer in the 20s, appear as themselves and become involved in a conspiracy to stamp out Zhu Guru. Now, Carl Van Vechten is parodied as Hinkle von Vampen, a wallflower member who infiltrates the Harlem community and to manipulate its artists and destroy the movement. Abdul Hamid is a black Muslim whose allegiance to Allah puts him at odds with Zhu Guru. Cut out his dancing and carrying on, fulfilling base carnal appetites, and ultimately leads him to betray it. Now, the narrative is spiced throughout with Reed's impious wisecracks and sly puns. Now, like Charles Wright's The Wig, Ishmael Reed's fiction reflects the spirit of playfulness displayed by the fabulators or mainstream black humorists in the 60s and 70s, who turned the materials of satire and protest into comedy, even as they masked a sardonic, scatological, paradoxic assault upon the elements of Western culture. But unlike the works of most of those writers, his satire and humor are girded by the prevailing faith of the spontaneous width of the diversity of black folklore or folk culture. The bad nigga, hero of Yellow Black Radio Broke Down, and the root doctor protagonist of Mumbo Jumbo would be joined in subsequent novels by characters based on such folk heroes as Brer Rabbit and John Henry. Even comic stereotypes such as Amos and Andy appear and become grits for Reed's satiric meal. The dive talk and vernacular speech and jokes that dice his works are obviously drawn from black folk humor, but so too are many of the clever puns that combine street smarts and lewd. Of his humor flows from the same source that inspired such black armchair and barbershop philosophers as Crow, a lean spokesman from my hometown. Tall like pine, black like crow, talk mo, shit than a radio. All right, my bad. Tall like pine, black like crow, talk more shit than a radio. During the 50s, I overheard him dismiss politics and the effectiveness of voting by asserting true man was a bald-faced lie. Don't seem to me like we've been asked. During the late 60s and early 70s, as African American humor was being ungagged on the mainstream stage, Reed was most adventurous in the raft of black writers who aggressively incorporated comedy into their fictional works. Humor suddenly emerged as one of the principal elements in African American literature. Examples vary from lyrical folk humor of Albert Murray's blues saturated train whistle guitar in 1974, set in Alabama during the 1920s, to the surrealistic intensity of Barry Beckham's Runner Max in 1972. An allegorical tale in which black baseball players struggle to infiltrate the major league mainstream society is impeded by a series of bizarre, tragic comic mishaps. If one novel were chosen, however, to represent the comic amplitude displayed in the rush of fiction published during this period, it would be Cecil Brown's The Love and Lives of Mr. Garvis's Nigger in 1969. I might have to see what that is. No highlighter in there. Oh, here we go. Highlighters. Voila. That might be another book to look up and read. Which way is up? Cecil Brown's The Loves and Lives of Mr. Jive Ass Nigga. The Loves and Lives of Mr. Jive Ass Nigga in 1969. I wonder if it's still out. I wonder what that's about. Words, man. These words. BILDUNGSROMAN. Bildungsroman. What the fuck that is? What is a Bildungsroman? I've never even heard of this word. Bildung. Not even in this dictionary. Let's see. A Bildungsroman. B-I-L. 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 A Bildungsroman. The hell is this? That's how it's pronounced. A Bildungsroman. A Bildungsroman. A novel about the moral and psychological growth of the main character. A Bildungsroman. Is that a Bildungsroman? A novel about the moral and psychological growth of the main character. A Bildungsroman. A Bildungsroman. Man. Brown's first novel was a picaresque Bildungsroman that charted the exploits of George Washington, its lustful trickster hero. From his rural southern upbringing through the Ivy League education and a sojourn in Copenhagen to self-revelation and return to America. His view of the world, all is jive and vexation of the spirit. Jive, it's all jive, echoes the cynicism and sense of absurdity expressed in the works by Ellison, Reed, and Charles Wright, and leads to the seductions, artful conniving, and inveterate lying that provide most of the comedy. Brown weaves folklore, for instance, an exaggerating retelling of the tale in which the slave John slaps his master's wife to prove how bad he is, and comic but often bitter exchanges between the sexes into this tale as he satirizes the sexual conquest that promise to confirm our identities but ultimately only obscure the mask and mask them. Shit. The novel forecasts a concern with the comic spirit that would lead Brown to screenwriting. He co-authored Richard Pryor's Which Way Is Up, which was a Which Way Is Up? Which was a damn good, I like that movie. Which Way Is Up? Definitely a good watch. Oh, the bitch is on berserk. I think that's my favorite part of the movie. And the second novel, Days Without Weather in 1983, which deals specifically with the fate of a black comedian in Hollywood and anticipates many of the themes aired in Robert Townsend's satirical film depiction of blacks in mainstream movies, Hollywood Shuffle in 1989. By the late 70s and early 80s, farce, folklore, fantasy, myth, and rich examples of an ironic comic perception that disguises many ordinary African Americans' worldview had become staples in black literature. Ishmael Reed continued his hoodoo aesthetic in novels such as Flight to Canada in 1976 and The Terrible Twos in 1982. Acceptance of folklore humor and wisdom was a prominent theme in many of the stories in Tony Cade Bambara's Gorilla My Love in 1972. Satire and fantasy in Living, George Kane's nightmarish depiction of a junkie's travail in Blue Child's Baby in 1973, and David Bradley's South Street in 1975, a novel finely tuned on the edge of comic thrust and bitter reality, used burlesque and satire to evoke the vitality of ghetto life. Now, Gerald Jones explored myth, madness, and destructive edges of humor in Eva's Man in 1976, and her collected short stories. Now, White Rat in 1977. Al Young etched memorable portraits of common black folks whose warm senses of humor abetted their day-to-day struggle to survive in Sitting Pretty in 1977 and Ask Me Now in 1980. And in Song of Solomon in 1977 and Tar Baby in 1981. Toni Morrison lyrically evoked aspects of black myth and folklore that nurtured her characters and allowed them to surmount earthbound deprivations. Now, these black writers, and others too numerous to mention, wrote fiction that affirmed the preeminence of an African American comic spirit that had been too long distorted or denied. Their work not only reflects an abiding appreciation of the earlier efforts of writers such as Schuler, Fisher, Hughes, Hurston, and Ellison, but also demonstrates that subtle faith in the humanizing value of laughter. Finally, the vernacular rhythms, folk ironies, and satiric comic riffs that embroidered or sometimes defined African American literary humor, excuse me, often mirrored specific examples of black folklore and comic whose source was the street humor or ordinary black folklores. Excuse me, or street humor of ordinary black folks. Writers whose source was the street humor of ordinary black folks. Writers frequently heightened the comic notes, investing them with resonances from European literature and folklore, or assuming the double-edged spirit of African American wit themselves and imaginatively amplifying them. But their works also regularly incorporated many examples intact. In the later instances, they function as a window to the comic because of America's preconceived notion of black life. Given the oversights of many critics, it is not surprising that ordinary readers often overlook black literature's comic resonance. Still, for those interested, African American folklore, a prime source of yesterday's street humor, might also have provided lavish examples of the real thing. And that was section 6 of chapter 10 of On the Real Side by Mr. Mel Watkins. That was chapter 10. Oh, man, I read terrible tonight. I think I did. Definitely a lot of words quite a few words I had to look up. Definitely quite a few words I had to look up. That, that Which Way Is Up by Richard Pryor, man. If you haven't seen that, I definitely recommend. That's a good old one to go watch. Which Way Is Up? Man. Yeah, that's a good one to go watch. Good old movie, if you're into old movies. So, yeah, I'm not gonna say when I'm gonna read again, because I had said that before, and I'll be inconsistent. I don't like to be inconsistent like that. The inconsistencies is not a good thing. There's got so much going on. Trying to balance it all is definitely a task at hand. Task at hand, trying to balance everything out. So, well, this is what we're gonna do, man. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're going to do. We are going to keep reading. We're going to keep pushing. One section at a time, one page at a time. One chapter at a time, one section at a time, one page at a time. Until we finish the whole thing, man. And hopefully I can get this old MacBook back working right. So that way I can go ahead and get back to doing this shit on this Mac. But at least get my other laptop working, my other phone. We'll be back next time with Reading with SHILO on the next episode of Reading with SHILO, man. We're going to be on chapter 11, Folklore and Street Humor. If you grinning, you in them. If you grinning, you in them. Yeah, we almost done. We could have been finished this book and on to the next, man. We could have been finished this book and on to the next, man. Bam! And I said I was going to read, I think I was supposed to read the medical, what it is, the medical apartheid. I think that's the one I was supposed to read. I don't know, man. I might have to pull out the magnifying glass for this one. The medical apartheid, the dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to the present. Antebellum. Yeah, we'll see, man. Well, we got to finish this one first, man. Let's finish this one first. The On the Real Side by Mel Watkins. A history of African American comedy from slavery to Chris Rock. We're going to finish that one. Ah, shit. Alarms going off everywhere. Hey, but that's it for today, man. That's it for today. Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, we'll come back and finish off On the Real Side next time, so I can get back to the next book, The Medical Apartheid. So, shalom, everybody. Shalom. Till next time, man. Shalom.